I am joined by Robert Griffin III, James White, Field Yates Meanakimes.
All right, so first play we're going to look at, 2nd and 2, one of the Patriots' first offensive plays. What's going on, everyone? Taylor Kyles here for CLNS Media, coming at you with another episode of Pat's Daily, brought to you by our good friends at Prize Picks. And today, joined by good friends Alex Barth, who I spent the week with down at the NFL Combine in Indianapolis. Alex, you were there a little bit longer than I was. You got to talk to and see some of the prospects I didn't get a chance to. So I want your thoughts maybe on some of the offensive tackles, what you heard from them. Also, how did you enjoy the week, bud? I had enjoyed being with you in a different environment. Usually we're, around here sharing Foxborough area, but we actually got to hang out in a different locale. So how'd you enjoy it?
Yeah, it was great. It was an awesome experience just to be so immersed in not just the draft, but football and the entire football world being there. And, that's where all the news was coming from. That's where all the stories were coming from. And to kind of, again, just be around it and feel like you're a little part of it was pretty cool. So hoping I get to do it again next year and many years moving forward, but it's a great experience. Had a great time, talking ball with you and Brian down there. And I appreciate everybody who tuned in to our stuff as well.
100%. And we're also going to have a crossover tomorrow. We're really going to go over everything that happened in the week a little more in depth. But before we get into the risers and fallers, was there any specific news that's really stuck out to you that you maybe want to talk about before we get into the weeds? I know there was some talk that's dropped, especially today, about the Giants and the Jets potentially being in the mix to trade up to potentially get themselves a quarterback. It feels like, while still unlikely, it's still in that shiny Mew category of finding it in the wild where, you're probably not going to have a chance at Abdul Carter or Travis Hunter if you're the Patriots. But if this quarterback buzz continues to generate and the teams that do need quarterbacks aren't able to get them, with Matthew Stafford, of course, returning to the Rams, it feels like that's one piece of news that we should not be overlooking.
Yeah, I'll just say the piece of news that came out of the week that really stood out to me after today, and we can kind of use this to transition into the risers and fallers, Taylor, was that the Patriots view Will Campbell as a tackle, arm length be damned. Now, maybe they didn't know it was going to come in as low as it did, and maybe that creates some conversation, but Mass Live had that report, and it certainly adds some interesting context to this because I still, Campbell's arm measurement's worrying. It is. He also had, outside of Armand Membu, probably the best workout today of any of the tackles. So what do you do with that, right? The report, and Mark Daniels kind of followed up on that a little later today on Twitter, just sort of saying they're comfortable taking him at 4 and trying him a tackle because they think he can play tackle, but they also know if he can't, he can play guard. Now, some people might be, rolling their eyes at a potential guard at 4th overall. And I'm not even saying that's necessarily the right pick. But if we're just going off of best talent, and Hunter and Carter are off the board, who's the most talented player left? It's Will Campbell or it's Ashton Genty. And I don't really know. Maybe Tet McMillan enters that conversation a little bit. I am more worried now about Mason Graham after the way he measured in as well, as I am with Campbell. Campbell seemed like a clear answer after Hunter. It felt like he was maybe halfway between the Hunter Carter tier and the McMillan, Graham, you want to throw Genty in there, like that group, right? So now where is he? Is he still in between? Does he fall back to the pack? Even if he falls back to the pack as a tackle, I think his positional value puts him up. But if he's not a tackle, it becomes a very different conversation. So that, it's going to be interesting to see what happens with him. But that Mass Live report, and that's what we have to go off of right now, kind of tells you that maybe Will Campbell is still, in fact, the guy.
Absolutely. And honestly, even though we did get the measurements for Will Campbell's arm length, and I do want to acknowledge that there were guys that tested at the Senior and Shrine Bowls where their numbers at the Combine, I think they lost almost half an inch on arm length. So that does need to be taken into account because I know our colleague Greg Bedard mentioned that Will Campbell weighed in, I think, during the season at 33 7/8 or something like that.
Well, so there were 2 reports. Greg had it at 32 7/8.
32, sorry.
And then there was an ESPN report yesterday. I'm blanking on the name of the author, but I think it was their Saints reporter who had it at 33 7/8.
Oh.
So he came in under both of those numbers. Even if you add the half inch, he's just over. I do sort of buy that difference because a lot of these guys measured in shorter than I expected. Right. Kelvin Banks did. Ariante Ursary came in shorter than expected. The only guy who didn't was Holland Pierce, who apparently took everybody else's length and hogged it.
He
for
had
himself.
inches to spare also.
Yeah, that dude
like
is, and you know, I have an affinity for the massive tackles, right? So right on my board he goes, but it is going to see what happens out of all of this. Are the Patriots, because this is how I've put it, right? If he's under, it doesn't mean he's not a tackle. It means you have to ask yourself if you think he's talented enough to be an outlier. And I don't want to project outliers. Like I said, I wouldn't do Mason Graham. Everybody who tells me that, well, you know, Mason Graham at 295, Aaron Donald was 285, and look what he did. Aaron Donald is a tremendous, tremendous outlier.
Right.
Ted Johnson running a 4.5 at 156 pounds. People compare him to Tank Dell, even though Tank Dell 12 pounds heavier and ran faster. Tank Dell is an outlier. So I can't sit here and tell you, you know, you can't just blindly consider Will Campbell because he's so good. He is an outlier. If you truly believe Graham, we'll throw Tez Johnson out because he's going later anyway. But like, if you truly believe Graham can be an Aaron Donald kind of player, of course you take him. Of course. If you believe Will Campbell is some outlier, and he did some other stuff in the testing today that suggests he's an outlier in the other way. Players over 300 pounds with a sub 540 and 30 plus inch vertical coming into today. Since 2003 was just Trent Williams and Tristan Wirfs. And now it's Campbell adds that list, and so does Armand Membu, who I'm sure we'll get to. But, you know, if you want to believe he's an outlier, you really have to be convicted in that, because there's a lot telling you that he's not the guy you're saying he is. And sometimes those guys, Bucky Irving is a popular name this week with that terrible RAS score. But, you know, for every Bucky Irving, how many guys do you get that just bombed the combine? It turns out they're not very good, right? So that's what it's going to come down to here with Campbell and with Mason Graham, who I also had on my fallers. Like, you really have to be convicted that that guy is who you think he is. Even now, you have to consider the new information and still be convicted, because you're asking a guy to do something that the vast majority of even NFL players cannot do.
And I'll say this, I'd actually argue that everything but Will Campbell's arm length actually does tell you that he could at least hang at left tackle. And that's why, for me, I've never moved off. I think he can be a very good left tackle. I'm not saying he can't play there in the NFL. What my concern is it's the one thing that you really want from those offensive tackles.
Right.
Because you can say that the arm length doesn't matter, but we always bring it back to boxing. You know how much of an advantage is. And Will Campbell's a guy who knows how to use his length. He maximizes what he has. But it's like, man, if he did have those 34-inch arms, man, like, you'd be talking about him like, yeah, you're not worried. Will Campbell, franchise left tackle, we're not talking about it. But really, when you see most people succeed at a high level, it's with his arm length, it's really at right tackle, or it's in a transition to guard. Now, I still think he can play left tackle. But if we're talking at 4, and this is why the measurement didn't do much for me, because on tape, you can see it. It does. Maybe it's not necessarily a problem, but it affects the way that he needs to play, where he needs to be more aggressive in his sets. He needs to be more patient, and it just creates even less of a margin for error for him. Now, and that's why with Mason Graham, he's in the same boat. Actually, he's a guy I do have on a faller for me, where not a 300 number, it scares me a little bit. I know he's a technician. I know, like Will Campbell, he's got everything else, where I feel silly even saying, you know what, he doesn't have quite the same measurables that you'd like, because especially for defense, it doesn't matter as much because you're attacking. But at the same time, you're talking about ceiling. And at 4, you want a pretty high ceiling. So it makes me think, especially with we talked about the defensive linemen, they've got questions too. Jalen Walker, if you talk about him being an edge rusher, he came in as a really weird fit at both spots, so he's a pure tweener. Michael Williams, you know, Mike Green, all these guys have certain questions. So I'm even more team trade down than I was before. But let's kind of transition the Will Campbell talk into the offensive line. Yeah. Do you have him as a riser or a faller? I actually have him as a riser, because I don't think that the arm length is going to move teams one way or the other. I think they know what they think he is. And I think everything else is fantastic. So I actually have him as a riser. But who do you have as kind of increasing their stock? And who do you think really hurt themselves this week?
Yeah, I had him as notable. I didn't have him as a riser or a faller, because it is so split, right? It's going to be a team-to-team thing. Teams that value arm length, he's a faller. Teams that don't, he's a riser. So Mike Vrabel said this week that he wasn't super big on arm length, so I guess that makes him a riser for the Patriots. But, you know, there may be other teams that knock him down. And if you're the Patriots, maybe now you have more conviction, if you believe he's a good player, that you can move down and get him. So I don't feel comfortable putting him in either group. I think there's a lot of nuance that goes into evaluating what he did on Sunday.
I agree, but I also think that, like, when you watch the tape, I'm sure there's going to be a handful of teams that really did want to know exactly what the number was, and maybe they were on the fence. But again, when you watch it, I feel like there's enough to tell you, like, he doesn't have great length. It's going to really be maybe whether or not he is on that threshold of making them comfortable or not. But how about some other guys? Because I know Armand Membu, we definitely need to talk about him, because yes, Will Campbell is the best offensive lineman in this draft. I think Armand Membu, especially with Josh Simmons' health, although it's trending positive apparently, I still think that Armand might be the best tackle in this class. And I've thought that since the clips on Twitter started popping up of the athleticism, the reach blocks, like how just effortlessly he moves. And I kind of wonder, do you think he could maybe play left tackle?
Yeah, I mean, where I'm at with cross-training tackles. This is a guy that is a, career right tackle, and he's really good over there. Look, he has the athleticism to make the move. If you're a team like, I think there's two teams where he makes a lot of sense. The Niners are one, because you can draft him up there at, what are they at, 11, I think, right? And sit him for a year and kind of develop him behind the scenes, behind Trent Williams. Then he becomes your left tackle next year. The other team would be the Dolphins, because you're moving him to left tackle, but he's still not a blind side protector. So you kind of have that, cushion. It makes the transition a little bit easier. He has the athleticism for it. I just worry about the adjustment for where the Patriots are at.
Fair. Well, you know who else at left tackle, who's played left tackle, had a really good day today? My boy, Ariante Ursary,
yes,
the dancing bear, tested with an elite relative athleticism score. And I think we already knew that, right? Like, he was on Feldman's freaks list. When you watch the tape, you can tell that he moves very differently for a guy that was that size. What did you think of his workout? Because it pretty much told me everything that I was hoping I was going to see from the tape, and now it's actually on paper. And do you think maybe he wasn't on Daniel Jeremiah's mock drafts in the first round on either round? Do you think that changes after what he did today?
I think so. I viewed him as a first-round pick for a while now. I just think his athleticism kind of sets him apart. He's definitely raw, but you look at his tape against Abdul Carter, and it was impressive. It shows that ceiling. So I think I thought he was a first-round pick. I think today helps that case. Yeah, I was really impressed with him today.
Hoping this is a situation like last season where the Patriots try to trade back into the end of the first round.
Right. Well, they did try last year. The hope is that they actually get there.
Cam Wolf said they tried to get back into the first round. I know, like, they were tied to Guyton, they were tied to Keon Coleman, they were tied to X. All guys I was interested in, but hopefully, again, this year it actually works out. Any guys at the offensive tackle spot that you thought maybe hurt their stock today, outside of Will Campbell for certain teams?
Nobody that projects like that highly. I thought it was a solid day for that group. Didn't see anybody really. I mean, again, guys measuring in shorter than expected. Did Josh Connerly who came right in at 33? Was it Connerly, Banks? Somebody in that group came right in at 33, which isn't going to help. I don't think Kelvin Banks necessarily stood out on a day where a lot of the tackles had good days. I don't think he was bad, but maybe sort of let the pack catch up to him from those tackles behind Will Campbell. Yeah, besides them, nobody really significantly.
That's all right. Well, we'll transition over to some offensive skill players. And first of all, actually, I want to start with some of the guys where their stock may be trending down, because the tight end.
Oh, sorry. It was Josh Simmons that came in at exactly 33. Okay. Banks and Connerly were 33.5.
That doesn't scare you, though, with Josh Simmons, because, I mean, obviously you don't have a ton of tape on it, but that guy moves like a freak. All right, so now moving on to the skill positions, I want to start with the down, because there are some that were very notable. Now, I do want to add a disclaimer. Gunnar Helm was going to be on this list, the Texas tight end, but it turns out he actually rolled his ankle. You can go on Twitter and look, and Ian Rappaport has the picture. It looks really bad, and his testing was really funky. Like, it didn't match what you saw on tape at all. And it turns out that was why. So he's going to test again at his pro day. We'll get better numbers there. So he was going to be on the list. I took him off. But there were some guys like Harold Fannin Jr. I don't think I've ever seen someone who, I understand he didn't look very fast on tape, but the transition from like the gauntlet drill even to what I saw from him on film was jarring. It looked like a totally different player, like, I don't know, Space Jam Monstars kind of energy. And then Tez Johnson, like we talked about this. very odd for him to go on the podium and say that, if you blink, you'll miss me. One of those where it's like, man, you're putting a lot of unnecessary attention on yourself. And then he goes and runs in the 4.5s for a guy who's really small and needed to be fast. So what did you think about some of those more disappointing performances from the skill players? And was there anybody else that stood out to you in that regard?
Yeah, so Fannin was probably the biggest faller for me at tight ends. There was also that blocking rep he had. And look, it's just one rep, but he turned his sled 90 degrees. Like, that's not great.
You wanted to go in a straight line for context. If it turns like that, you did something wrong.
Yeah. As for the rest of the tight ends, the group as a whole wasn't as impressive as I wanted, but there were certainly standouts. Mason Taylor's the big one. He's just so polished. And I think he's one of the youngest players in this draft, right? He's going to be 20 when he gets drafted. So for him to be as advanced as he is at this point, at 20 years old, like tight end 3 for me. It was between
ahead of
him or Helm.
So it's good. Loveland and
Warren. Yeah. So, I mean, Helm was in that mix too, seeing the thing about his ankle, maybe we'll reevaluate that, but really impressed with him. I thought Gavin Bartholomew had a solid day, ran a good 40. He moved a lot of guys struggled with the sled, and I made note of that. Like, he did a really good job with the sled. And then I got to, shout out my guy, Robbie Oots. I think it was the 38 whatever inch vertical. His vertical is the highest by a player 270 pounds or more since 2003.
Power, baby.
I thought he looked natural as a pass catcher. So I, is kind of that move H-back kind of guy. Oh, and Terrence Ferguson was awesome as well.
Yeah.
I was forgetting somebody else. Another guy that in the pass catching, the quarterbacks were having a rough go of it. No offense to Matt Corral and whoever else that was, but they were having a rough go of it, especially early. So you really got to see how well these guys adjust and track the ball. And I thought Ferguson, in that sense, did a really good job.
Yeah, Ferguson and Bartholomew are guys I'm definitely going to have to check out some more tape on. I haven't seen a ton of them, but they were going to probably be later in my process. Now I'm going to bump them up.
So I'll give you this on Bartholomew just for your research. He had a really good freshman year 2 years ago, and then hasn't quite been the same since. Pitt changed the offense after his freshman year. So he's one of these guys where you know how I love to get in the weeds with these sorts of players, right? Where, well, what year did you watch? Who do you believe is the real version of that player? Do you think he really is the guy he was his freshman year and the change in offense hurt him? Or was his freshman year just kind of a fluke and he actually is the guy he was the last 2 years? So teams will be split on him, I think.
Now, when it comes to Mason Taylor, I get the polish. Like, he's a natural hands catcher. Just everything looks very fluid for him. But I want more from the tape. Like, he can do, I think he can win in the seams. I think he's a really fluid athlete. And I think that he's going to be a player who's better in the pros than he was in college. It's just, I was hoping for someone with his skill set that he'd be a little better after the catch. Just in terms of an athlete with the ball in his hands, I was expecting more. I didn't necessarily see that. Didn't get the wow plays. But still, can't deny that he's a very naturally gifted player. And then in terms of some other skill position guys that kind of stood out, Matthew Golden, running in the 4.2s. Now, that wasn't even very surprising because when you look at his tape, his routes are really good. And he's one of those guys where he pairs the dynamic athleticism with that route running. And it showed at Texas. The guy was getting behind defenses. And really, it felt like down the stretches when he started to kind of vault over Isaiah Bond is, wait a minute, this is the guy that we should be talking about as one of the better receivers in this class. So it felt like he really helped his stock out. And then Donovan Edwards and Omarion Hampton. The running backs all killed it. I'll go with Omarion Hampton because he was the guy last year just watching Drake May. It's not every once in a while, but pretty often you were like, damn, he just checked it down and this running back just completely ripped off this massive play out of nowhere. So seems like he's probably going to be out of the Patriots range, probably going to be a second-round pick. So the reunion with Drake May might take a while, maybe once he hits free agency or something like that. But, I mean, the running backs, Elliot Wolf said it was a loaded class, and he was not wrong. They all showed out.
Yeah, well, all but one. We'll get to that. Donovan Edwards was really good. Let me pull up my list here so I don't miss anybody. Donovan Edwards just well-rounded, which I think is his best trait, is his versatility, how much he can do. Travion Henderson, I knew he could move. People kind of have been getting on me for underrating Travion Henderson.
Why were you underrating him?
Judkins better, but I didn't think he was that like that. I saw him more as a power guy than a pull away guy. A 4.43 with, I think he had like a 38 and a half inch vertical. Yeah, I was under on him. I mean, looking at him next to Judd, it's tough next to Judkins. He's so good, but Henderson was great. And then I'll throw in a guy further down, but Woody Marks. A lot of guys, I think, struggled more so than not with pass catching drills. Woody Marks, to me, is the best pure pass catching back in this class, and he showed it. And I think that's good. So if there's a team looking for a James White type, that might be the guy that you target, and I think he can be had on day 3.
Where's the sweet spot for the Patriots when it comes to running back? Because it feels like they're going to take someone. They need another dynamic guy who could potentially take over down the road. And I'm not really sure where it is. I feel like it's probably the 4th or later. And whatever round you pick, who's a guy you think could maybe fill that slot that they need?
Well, so this can go one of 2 ways. And here I go putting a qualifier on it again. How worried are they about Ramondre Stevenson's 2024 season? If they're not worried, I think the sweet spot is probably the 4th or 5th round. And that's where you're going to get, if Cam Scatterbo falls a little bit after not working out, Devin Neal might be in that range, Trevor Etienne, RJ Harvey. I'm struggling with the name. Is it Bishal Tootin, the kid from Virginia Tech, who had a good workout?
I was thinking Bishal, but I'm bad with names. I feel bad.
Yeah. So that's if they're looking for like a third guy, right? Or a guy to push Antonio Gibson. If they're looking to replace Ramondre Stevenson, if they're worried about his fumbles, you have 69 and 77. You have 2 picks right in that range. That's going to be Henderson, Judkins, Dylan Sampson. Some people are saying maybe Caleb Johnson falls. Didn't love his time in the 40, but he does enough that I'm good with that. Like, then to me, you go in that range. Those are the sweet spots. I would make a decent investment at the running back position if I'm the Patriots. I really would.
Anything you want to say about Ollie Gordon?
I knew he wasn't going to come out and run in the 4.3s. I knew that, but he was lumbering, and in the drills too, he was lumbering a little bit. I was expecting better than that. You adjust. I'd been saying that he's projected right now to go, early day 3, which I still think is right for a spell back, power back. That's probably the right spot. I thought he maybe had some bell cow, like lead back upside. I was thinking maybe he sneaks into day 2. I still think he can be that player because I saw him do it at Oklahoma State, but I don't think he's, he didn't help his draft stock. You need a good combine, I think, to get into the top 100 into that. I think he's going to end up going just outside of the top 100.
I was going to say, is he still, because this class is so deep, is there still a draftable grade on him, or do you think he just put his stock but didn't take himself? Just because I'm not familiar with the running back class yet. So
no. Yeah. You shouldn't adjust that much for anybody for the combine, pending something, truly. There's been much worse workouts, right? That's a guy like Kayshon Boutte who, and obviously it worked out, which maybe is an example of why you don't do this. Is you just like a 2nd or 3rd round pick? Didn't he run like a 4.6, a 4.7?
Something like that.
Because he ran it on a broken ankle. But unlike Gunnar Helm, we didn't know until I think after the draft that he did that. And he fell obviously all the way to the 6th round. You don't make that much of an adjustment. So for me, Ollie Gordon, like the upside of a good combine for him, how high was he going to push himself? Fringe top 50. Like maybe he gets into the back end of the 2nd round. Falling to me, like his floor coming in was somewhere in the 120s, 130s. Okay. And right now I don't think he had that bad of a combine. I'd probably say he's in the 100 to 120 range for me.
Probably not going to get to the running backs until probably towards the end of the month. But
you got a lot to get to, so leave yourself some time.
Yeah, I absolutely will. There's plenty of time to go, but I'm pretty familiar with this next group, the defensive line. We will get to them right after a word from our friends at Prize Picks. Be right back.
Prize Picks is the best place to get real money, sports action with over 10 million members and billions of dollars in awarded winnings. Prize Picks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to all, and all you have to do is pick more or less on at least 2 players for your shot to win up to 1,000 times your cash. So run your game all season long on Prize Picks. Make sure to sign up on Prize Picks today and use that code CLNS to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Again, that is code CLNS to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, Run your game.
All right, Alex, defensive line. Who helped their stock in the combine? Obviously, there's one guy that's really going to stick out. We could probably start with that is Shamar Stewart.
Yes.
And everything but college production, he's basically a Myles Garrett clone. Now, that is a pretty big asterisk because personally, when I watch Shamar Stewart, this is another guy where I knew that he was going to test really well, but that was so good. I was like, all right, let me go back to the tape, see if I like it a little bit more. It pretty much was what I thought it was the first time, where he reminds me a lot of Keon White. The athleticism, the explosiveness, the power, all of these things are there. You see the tools. It's the finishing. It's the technique. It's the refinement that need a lot of work. And in Shamar Stewart's defense, a lot of that has to do with the system at Texas A&M, right? His body type kind of changed a lot, where he's like a 300-pound guy. He's a 280-pound guy. Now he's more of like a 265-pound guy. So he's kind of a difficult projection because you know there's going to need to be a lot of coaching. He's going to need to be used as more of a true edge guy than he was there where he was kicked inside. But with those tools, you got Terrell Williams. You got 2 pass rush specialists on the coaching staff. If they're going to take a chance on a guy with tools and you want to go the opposite of a Mason Graham or a Will Campbell, where it's like, yeah, physically their ceiling's not as high, but their technicians, he seems like the kind of guy you want to turn to.
Yeah, I think if we're going to talk like toolsy edge rusher, he's probably this like pure tools upside, right? We're not including Abdul Carter in this. He's probably the second guy. I'd still give Michael Williams an edge. They're no pun intended, but they're close to me. I was really impressed with what he did. And the buzz before the workout down at the combine was that he was a guy the league was too low on. He was a guy that, could maybe sneak his way into the top 10. I'm working on my first round mock draft right now. It'll be up tomorrow. I can tell you, where did I have him? I know I had him high. I didn't quite have him in the top 10. I had him up there. Yeah, he helped himself out a lot. This was a guy that the consensus was fringe first round pick, and now I think he's definitely a first round pick. And you're looking at the top half of the first round.
It's going to be an interesting how people view him and Michael Williams because they're both pretty young prospects, guys who the production isn't really there, but they're good against the run. It's kind of a Jadeveon Clowney type of comparison where they're going to need a lot of help, and maybe they never will become those super refined pass rushers, but they're so physically gifted, they're going to be impact players no matter where they are. What other defensive linemen really stood out to you, or positive ways or negative ways?
So I thought Jamari Caldwell was not Jamari Caldwell, sorry, Earl. I thought Jamari Caldwell was really good. I also thought Derek Harmon was really good. Both of those Oregon interior defensive linemen should go in the first round, I would say. Those guys both looked like first-round picks. I thought they were excellent. The movement skills were great. Your guy, Darius Alexander, I thought had a really good workout. And Landon Jackson, he's a guy that's going to have to win with pure power, and he looks like one of the most powerful players on the field. So he wasn't going to wow you with any of the agility stuff. I don't know that anybody's expecting him to. He was a guy that had to go out and show he can win with brute force. And I think as much as you can do that at the combine, I think he did it.
Yeah, it was really cool seeing, like, there's that video of him doing the bag drills when he's younger, and it looks crazy. It's literally just like he's trying to slap every bag upside the head like there's no technique. And then the after where he does it at the combine and much more forceful and useful with his hands, the spin, like it all looked much, much more refined. That was pretty cool to see, especially I thought he didn't have the best weekend during Senior Bowl week. He came on strong late, so it's cool to see he built on that. Also, Tyleik Williams out of Ohio State.
Yeah, he was really good. This defensive tackle class, Caldwell, Williams, like there was a little bit of news this week on Christian Barmore. The news was basically there's no news. But at that point, you might see that as a good thing. All right, well, he's not hanging it up just yet. But, especially if they're going to trade back into the first round, it becomes a discussion if they need a new defensive tackle. And a guy like Jamari Caldwell, a guy like Tyleik Williams would certainly fit that role. And there's a lot of talent at that position.
CJ West, another guy I really like in that
CJ
group.
West was good, yeah.
Now let's move to the second level, all right? Linebackers. I think we could start with Jihad Campbell because, oh my God, he was outstanding. Looked like a natural mover. Also stayed late and did pass rush drills. Looked like a natural there. I think he really set himself apart in the discussion of like, I don't know, how closely they were being discussed. But when you look at the mocks, like Jalen Walker was getting a lot more respect, it felt like, than was Jihad Campbell. Now it feels like, especially now that we have the measurables, one absolutely separated himself from the other.
Yeah, I think Jalen Walker's will go higher. I think he's a better player. But I was kind of kicking myself because Jahad Campbell, this is a guy that plays linebacker, physical player, leadership from Alabama. Like, this is my guy. This is one of the guys. If you remember how much I was banging the table for Henry To'o a couple years ago, he's a better version of Henry To'o. And for whatever reason, I don't know, maybe I was too focused on Will Campbell. Like, I just kind of let that slide. That's usually a guy I'm going to the table for. And when I did talk about him, I was mentioning that I thought he was a first-round pick. All the second-round pick stuff, to me, was simply a product of the linebacker position's been devalued in the NFL. Jalen Walker's already going, and people are like, yeah, 2 linebackers in the first round. I don't know about that. But no, Jahad Campbell's kind of guy that can change a defense. I believe he's a first-round pick, and I think he solidified itself. I know there are some Patriots fans hoping he'd be there at 38. Not faulting you for hoping it. It would be awesome. I'd love to see it. You might as well hope, a little more extreme. That's like hoping Travis Hunter is going to be there at 38, right? Or, let's all hope that, I don't know, who's somebody else. Let's all hope Ashton Genty falls at 38, right?
You're open against hope.
Todd Campbell's going to go top 10. Could he go top 20? I absolutely think that's in play.
Another guy that really wowed me. Now, I was a big Jeffrey Bossa guy out of Oregon. Like, that's my middle linebacker, the future in this Vrabel defense. I still like him. I still thought he had a really solid workout. I was a little surprised by the long speed, but also, like, when you see he can run the pole, it's not really something you need to project. The number doesn't scare me. But Carson Schwezinger, the UCLA linebacker, my God, he tested through the roof. He had a really, really good day. So I finally watched the tape because I know the chat had been telling me to watch him. People in the comments been telling me to watch him. And I get it now. Like, as much as I like Bossa, and if they want to go more third round, I get it. But if they're in the second round and they say, we want a playmaker in the middle of our defense, I would strongly consider it. I know they have bigger needs, but the playmaking, the speed, the instincts, like, there are times where those things will work against him, where he'll over pursue and just completely take himself out of the play. But it's not very often, and it's the kind of thing where I think as he plays more football, is exposed to some more misdirection, makes some mistakes, he'll be able to figure it out and get better. And in this Vrabel system where we know they're going to be playing a lot of zone, where you're going to have linebackers patrolling the middle of the field, he seems like the perfect kind of guy to capitalize on those opportunities. Whereas Abassa was used more in Oregon as like a man defender. You saw some of that zone work, and he can still do it, but with Schwezinger, it's like that was most of UCLA's defense, and it really popped. So his workout got me to finally watch the tape, and I thought he's an outstanding player.
Yeah. Another one I'll throw out at the linebacker position is Danny Stutzman. Danny Stutzman had a good workout. Also thought, like, interviewed really well at the podium, things like that. Has that kind of face of the franchise linebacker vibe, like a guy like Jahad Campbell does. I was really impressed with him as well.
Yep. All right, buddy, let's wrap it up with some defensive backs. Now, would you like to acknowledge the elephant in the room, or rather the name that is all posted throughout the chat? Elijah Huzzie. Huzzie? Do we know how to pronounce it yet?
I think it's Huzzie. Yeah,
Huzzie.
I don't know.
Okay. So there was the whole thing where, like, he only had one person at his podium and everybody was at Travis Hunter. Do we want to give some background and perspective on why exactly that kind of thing happens? Because I understand that from the outside, it looks terrible. And I'm sure, like, yes, some people probably could have gone and, paid more attention to the guy. But I feel like there are some factors that maybe we could just let people know that affect whether or not you're able to go to one podium or not. Like, I'll let you handle it, because I know you were kind of more involved in that scrum.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I if people are annoyed, I apologize. I didn't mean any disrespect to him or any other player. There's 8, 9, 10 podiums going at once. There were a lot of players I wanted to talk to and get a chance to talk to. I would say, just like any other job, we all have our assignments, and we're there for work. So when a guy like Travis Hunter's talking, sometimes that's your job, is to be there and get the coverage of that. So I didn't mean any disrespect to Elijah Huzzie, or Ed, like there. Who else? I didn't make it to. It was one of the running backs I didn't make it to because I was trying to talk to Ollie Gordon, Donovan Edwards, Devin Neal. Oh, Damian Martinez was the one I missed.
Yeah,
the best running backs at the
Mondre,
same time.
Mondre Jr.
Yeah, I didn't get to, like, I could list them all off. There's a bunch of players I didn't get to. It's tough. Next year, hopefully they space it out a little better. So there's your answer if you're wondering. Just like we all have assignments to do at work. That's just, it's as simple as that.
And I think we're all fans on this pod. And also, I wish you could have seen Bart down there. This man forgot to eat during one of the days. We literally had to keep him on watch and make sure this man was keeping himself out. He was working so hard. Just want to give you some background because I understand when you're seeing it through the phone, sometimes things can kind of get misunderstood. But outside of that, looking at the defensive backs who actually did test during the combine, who really stood out to you? And there was actually a couple of names that we brought up on these pods before, so that's pretty exciting.
Yeah, so the first guy, you know I love those big physical corners, right? You know that those are the guys I'm looking at. How about Darian Porter running a 4.3 at 6'3"? Was he 190-something pounds?
Yeah.
90-somethingth percentile in arm length. The dude is a robot. The dude is just a freakish athlete, and there's more that goes into being corner, obviously, than being a freak athlete.
It's a good start. It's a damn good start.
Taylor, tell me if I'm being irresponsible with this one, because this was, if I had to rank the 10 favorite prospects I've had since, we'll go back to really 2018, which was the first year I was really doing this, right?
Okay.
If I had to rank the 10 favorite prospects I've had, not number one, but certainly on that list is Tariq Woolen.
Right.
Am I getting ahead of myself if I throw that out as a little bit of a comp for Darian Porter?
I don't think so, because I think helmet scouting is okay to a degree, especially if it's within similar seasons or a close range.
Wait, how's that helmet scouting?
Oh, wait, no, oh my gosh, I'm thinking of somebody else. Who am I thinking of? I'm thinking of somebody else.
Tariq Woolen went to UTSA.
Right. Who am I thinking of?
I have no idea.
I don't know.
Porter's at Iowa State.
Okay.
Are you thinking of what was the guy I really liked a couple years ago from Kansas State, who is another one of these guys? I don't know why I'm blanking.
I'm derailing this podcast. Anyway, please continue. Save me from myself.
Anyway, yeah, like you said, though, it's a fantastic place to start. This is where you kind of wish they still had Mike Pellegrino, because you might know Mike Pellegrino's turning this guy into a star, right? But, you have Christian Gonzalez, who tremendous athlete in his own right, but he's your technician. Mm-hmm. You have him on one side, and then you have your just athleticism on the matchup on the other side in Porter. And then it's Marcus Jones or Jonathan Jones, who Andrew Callahan reported today, or Doug Hyde, the Herald guys reported they wanted to bring back in the slot. Or maybe you go out, you find another slot corner, who there were some guys that fit that description that I really liked in terms of the workouts. And now you're really cooking. So Darian Porter, and then to a lesser extent, little bit smaller, better 40, also had a really good workout, was Maxwell Porter. Not Maxwell Porter, Maxwell Harrison.
Yeah.
From Kentucky. So those two to me were the clear cut, and not just dominant workouts, guys that I think fit what the Patriots want at corner too. Andrew Callahan told me on the Patriots Hub podcast this week, he expects the Patriots to look at corner in the middle rounds. So both of those guys are kind of middle round picks. Harrison at this point will probably be a second round pick. Going to go in that range. I would think Porter might go a little later. He's a little bit of an older prospect. Doesn't quite have the, it's Big 12 versus SEC, right? That thing. Mm-hmm. But either one, I think you're getting a really good number two opposite Christian Gonzalez if they can land one of those two guys. If they're going to take a day two corner, those are easily my favorites.
Now let's wrap it up at safety, because I think that's going to be another area they've got to hit in the draft, probably on day 3, because they got a lot bigger needs. You have Peppers, you have Duggar, but with them having age concerns, injury concerns, you'd like to at least give yourself a little more help, considering you don't know what Marte Mapu is quite yet. Anybody that could be in that day 3 range that stood out to you at the combine that probably helped their stock?
So I'm looking at free safeties. You know how I feel about this, right? Get Duggar and Peppers in the box, get somebody who can patrol the back end. Billy Bowman from Oklahoma. I got a chance to talk to him too.
Awesome.
Short conversation, great conversation with him though. He has that kind of intense demeanor where he's not like an a-hole, but it's just very, very business-like, very serious. A lot of guys get up to the podium
and
like
Duggar
around. What's up?
Is it like Duggar?
A little more. Duggar's pretty short spoken, right?
Yeah.
Bowman talked a little more, but it was this laser focus intensity. Some guys are up there, they're joking around, they're having fun, right? They're trying to get their brand out there to the media. Billy Bowman, I asked him what worked at the Senior Bowl, and he's just, gave me very direct football. I felt my range was good. I felt I was staying with receivers. I was seeing the ball well, blah, blah, blah. I felt I prepared, just business. He's a guy that I think can play the back end, part-time. I don't know that he'd do it full-time, but if you want to go to that 3 safety look on obvious passing downs and have a guy that can take care over the top, I think he can do that. I think he can probably also play a little slot corner, which he said some teams have talked to him about. So they're going to need depth behind Marcus Jones, especially if Jonathan Jones doesn't come back. So Billy Bowman gives you a backup slot corner. He gives you a rotational deep safety. I think he's and I actually talked to Danny Stutzman about him too, who kind of told me he's like a quiet leader, but he's a leader kind of guy. So he gives you that maybe personality intangible you're looking for. I was already high on Billy Bowman coming in. I think I'm even higher on him coming out. Maybe sneaks in at day 2, probably a day 3 pick, a little more undersized. He's a scheme-specific player, so there's some teams that probably won't have him high on their board just because there's not going to be a role for him outside of special teams wherever he gets drafted. But for the Patriots, I think he's a tremendous fit.
I'm also a Bowman truther, and with them needing help at probably the slot position, where if Jonathan Jones comes back, given his size, you'd think he probably would knock back into the slot. Like with that,
yeah. If John Jones comes back, they're okay between him and Marcus Jones. You know, another guy long term would make sense. And again, if you can get Bowman on day 3, that tracks. But yeah, if Jonathan Jones goes, then definitely a guy you need there
for sure. All right, buddy, let's wrap.
I got one more. You got
one more. Oh, I'm sorry. Please fire away.
We're not gonna do kickers.
Oh, we can. Yes, we can do kickers.
We're not going to do kickers.
We can absolutely do. You didn't have a kick. Was there a kicker on your list? Did I miss it?
I did not put him on my list. I forgot because we didn't get to see they didn't televise the kicker workouts. So I was just going off my write-ups.
Give me some names. Give us some names.
One name. Ben Sauls.
Ben Sauls.
I got a chance to talk to Ben Sauls from Pitt. Another guy that I think has the personality that they are looking for. And a guy that what stands out to me is he's coachable. He had a big improvement 2 years ago, had a great year in 2024. He was asked about that and talked about kind of his process and how he went through the details to figure out what he could fix in his motion and his approach and things like that. So that kind of told me coachable. And you always want guys who are coachable, right? That's always a good trait. I know it sounds dumb. There's more to that than you think. So I am in on, if they're going to draft a kicker, and he might be a UDFA, they might be able to get him anyway. But if they're going to draft a kicker, I want it to be Ben Sauls.
I mean, being coachable is pretty huge as a kicker. It's such a mental position. If you can take what someone's telling you and apply it, that's pretty huge, especially you got somebody like Tom Quinn who's done it for so long. All right, buddy. Now I'm going to get you out of here. But first, plug whatever you've got coming out that people need to keep an eye out for.
So combine previews all up on 98.5thesportshub.com. Tons of conversations with people down in Indy as well on the Sports Hub YouTube page, and NFL Mock Draft 1.0 coming tomorrow morning on 98.5thesportshub.com. You want a little spoiler alert?
Yes, please.
Abdul Carter, first overall pick.
Okay. I like how that worked out. And honestly, every day it feels like more and more possible. Hopefully none of these quarterback needy teams sign anybody. Keep them desperate, baby. All right.
Well, no, Abdul Carter first overall, like to the Titans.
Oh, first overall. Jeez,
I'm not giving away the Patriots pick, man. I need people clicking on that.
Can you tell I haven't slept? All right. I'm going to go take a nap. But until next time, everybody, take care of yourselves. Take care of each other. We will see you next time. Peace, y'all.